Hey guys, this is the Old English D podcast for Tuesday, July 23rd. My name is Josh. I will be your host for this episode of the podcast. Appreciate everybody for listening, giving us a chance to go over some Tigers news, tidbits, stats, and things. I do apologize for this week's episode if I sound a little funny. Dealing with a bit of a cold right now. Actually trying to get over the final, last gasps of it as of right now. But we will do our best to get through it for this week. A lot to go over yet again. Good baseball tends to do that, it seems. We will get right into it here first with kind of right where we left off last week. We recorded and we released Tuesday morning, and that evening, Tuesday evening, was the All-Star game where we had two Detroit Tigers participate. As probably a lot of you know, Tarek Skubal and Riley Green were named to the All-Star team, and they played last week in Texas, in Arlington. Controversially, Tarek Skubal was not named the starter for the game. Corbin Burns of the Baltimore Orioles was named as a starter for the game. Pretty tough look there for Bruce Bochy, especially seeing that Corbin Burns had a little bit of trouble in the first. He did allow a couple base runners in that first inning and looked a little bit off. But he got through it. He got through it fine, and then Skubal came in for the second, which it is what it is at this point. I'm still personally a little bit miffed at Bruce Bochy for that decision. I think that Skubal had the best first half of any pitcher in baseball, period. And I think Skubal versus Skeens would have been just as much, if not more, of a highlight for the All-Star game anyway. But Skubal came in the second, pitched a clean inning, one whole inning of work, no hits, no walks, no strikeouts. He got a lot of contact, but he did get through it 1, 2, 3 as the starter of an All-Star game should. And yeah, the game was actually interesting to watch personally. You have a guy like Shohei Ohtani who homers in the game. Jarren Duran, who is killing it for the Red Sox right now, homers late to give the AL the lead. American League ends up winning the game 5-3, but right in the middle there, Riley Green comes in and gets his at-bats, gets his All-Star debut in his game, replacing Stephen Kwan in left field. He went over 2 with a strikeout. His first at-bat, he hit the ball quite hard, made it to the track. I thought that was a good showing from him. And then he had a pretty cool diving catch in the outfield as well as a part of his kind of full showcase there for that game. So good showings from our Tigers. Nothing spectacular, nothing mind-blowing, but definitely made Detroit proud with that. Continuing on with our kind of recap of the last week, we're going to the few games that we had. They obviously had the All-Star break. They didn't play for some of the week this past week, but they did start on Friday. They started a road trip in Toronto against the Blue Jays. Blue Jays, a team who are struggling mightily right now, dealing with a few injuries as well as just a lot of inconsistency, especially at the plate. To be honest, in that series, their pitching looked pretty good. At least their starting pitching. I know their bullpen had some issues that the Tigers kind of were able to exploit there in that game, but starting pitching in that series looked fantastic. Obviously, the first name that comes to mind is Yusei Kikuchi for the Blue Jays. He looked really good until the Tigers got to the third time through the order. Then things kind of unraveled for him. Chris Bassett early in his start also looked really good. For a guy who looks like he's in his upper 30s, he threw the ball pretty well. But the Tigers were able to come away with a 2-1 series victory, winning Friday 5-4, winning Saturday 7-3, and then losing Sunday's game 4-5, not without a little bit of drama, because Justin Henry Malloy hit a grand slam Sunday to follow Jake Rogers' grand slam on Saturday. So big takeaways from that series for me. Kind of had three written down here. First off, all Bats came off of that All-Star break hot. They were able to continue some of that um, clutch hitting and timely hitting from the last week when we played Cleveland and Los Angeles into the Toronto series, and even as we'll get into tonight against the Guardians when we played them tonight. But yeah, to be able to score runs against the Blue Jays to come off the break and not lose that momentum was huge. To be able to score 5 runs, 7 runs, and 4 runs after the break was huge. Keep the team in the game, keep the starters engaged. To be able to do that was big. Next big point I have here, Reese Olson going to the IL with shoulder discomfort, I believe was how it was termed. Listen, this is probably the biggest news of the week, honestly, for the Tigers, because it really puts into question a lot of what's going to go on in the next couple weeks. Firstly, currently, as the Tigers stand to play in the next couple weeks, the pitching staff is in rough shape right now. You've got 2 guys at the top of your rotation in Skubal and Flaherty, who are throwing the ball lights out right now, reliable. Flaherty with a little bit of health problems going on. And then you look at a guy like Kaider Montero, who's also providing some really good innings for this team. And, he's a rookie. He's going to struggle a little bit, but it's still going to be a bit of a struggle for him. But he's providing those innings and providing that length, giving the bullpen the rest. After that, you really struggle to find where the innings are going to come from coming up here soon. Obviously, Reese going on the IL is problematic. Casey Mize is currently on the IL. Hopefully, he's coming back towards the end of this month, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. That's the latest update that we have on him. You have Kenta Maeda, who was starting games for us, but he's been pitching decently well out of the bullpen. He had a little bit of a rocky outing in Toronto, but he might be an option to come back in. But you even go further down the line, options that the Tigers have had earlier this year or even last year that they don't have currently. Sawyer Gibson Long, sorry, wrong hyphenated last name player. Sawyer Gibson Long currently out with Tommy John and a hip surgery as well. So fast recovery, prayers for him. Matt Manning is injured right now in AAA after actually putting up one of his better starts, unfortunately. So you talk about a guy who has really struggled to stay healthy. Really sad for him, for Matt Manning. And you start to look down that line, and there's really not a whole lot else available. It was good to see Montero be able to come up from Toledo, but the pitching staff down there is looking kind of thin as well. You have guys like Ty Madden, who's down there, but he's not having the greatest year. I believe his ERA is somewhere in the 6s. I'd have to double check that. Jackson Jobe, their top pitching prospect, is nowhere near ready to pitch in the major leagues this year. I apologize. Ty Madden with an 8.43 ERA. I do apologize. But just Wilmer Flores is on the injured list. There's not a whole lot of starting pitching help down there. The Tigers brought up Easton Lucas as a corresponding roof for Reese Olson, and he came out and had a pretty rocky 9th inning tonight against the Guardians. So he might not even be that, final decision at this point. You have to wonder if you're going to have to bring somebody in from the outside. I hate to be the person that says this, but a guy like Trevor Bauer would be a godsend for this baseball team right now. Just a lot of question marks around the pitching. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Tigers deal with it moving forward. They have a bullpen game planned for one of the games the rest of this series against the Guardians. And they have another TBA as well, which is concerning due to the fact that they don't really have a starter. I believe tomorrow's game on Tuesday. Well, tomorrow for me, today for you guys. Tuesday is going to be a bullpen game. Not really sure who's starting that one. Then you have Flaherty going on Wednesday. Flaherty versus Bybee. Should be a pretty good matchup there. And then again, like I said, on Thursday, another TBD. Just it's gonna make it for an interesting week pitching wise, but thankfully the offense has been able to carry their own weight here recently and been able to do some good things and keep the team in games, even when we've had to rely on the bullpen a little bit. And then last kind of thought, and this again stems over into the Guardians series as well that started tonight. I'd like to give some flowers to Justin Henry Malloy. Here recently, he's really been able to figure it out at the plate. He's really started to show that promise that he had in the minor leagues and what he was able to do. In the month of July, he's playing 12 games. In those games, by the way, Tigers 8-4, which is awesome to see. 38 at bats, 11 hits, 1 triple, 3 home runs. Well, 4 home runs, including tonight. Sorry, Baseball Reference is not updated yet. 10 RBIs, 7 walks, 11 strikeouts, a stolen base. He's hitting 290 plus. He's hitting 400. His on-base percentage is 400 plus. Just really starting to show the combination of that plate discipline as well as being able to hit the ball hard. And I think that's super valuable. We've seen him start to hit pretty high in the order, second, third, fourth. And that's huge for this team, especially a team that's trying to pick up the slack from Torque being Torque, Kerry Carpenter being on the IL. Hopefully we'll be able to see him back soon. But to have a guy come up from the minor leagues and start to produce very similarly to Wenceel Perez, doing things that he's been able to do, it's kept this team afloat and is really driving this team forward on the offensive side. And then, like I said, great series opener from the Tigers tonight. Skubal, one of the strangest starts I've ever seen from him. He clearly did not have, I'm not sure what he didn't have tonight, but he didn't have his usual stuff tonight. Gave up 10 hits and somehow allowed 1 earned run in 7 innings of work. Just one of the more gutsy outings that I've ever seen from a pitcher. Just clearly was off, somehow got the team 7 innings of 1-run baseball. Clearly he had some help from his defense. Some double plays turned behind him were very, very helpful. Plays in that inning where he gave up the run, they had the bases loaded and they were able to figure out a way to get out of there with limited damage. And the offense came to play. They won the game 8-2. Like I said, Justin Henry Malloy with a home run, Jake Rogers with a single that turned into a triple, that turned into a inside the park home run to score some runs. Colt Keith homered late in the 9th inning, I believe, to kind of put the cherry on top. Solid baseball being played, especially on the offensive side right now for the Tigers. And it goes to show when you start to gel together as a team, and the Tigers seem to do this every year, good things start to happen. And for the Tigers to have won their 50th game tonight, I think is such a big sign moving forward. With a lot of question marks surrounding the team, with a lot of guys wondering how long they're going to be in Detroit, this is a good feeling, and this is something that the Tigers fans should relish moving forward, because we might not have that forever, and be thankful for the winning that we've experienced so far. We're going to take a short break here. We'll get into a little more in-depth draft update, kind of calling out some guys that are lagging behind, and we're going to talk about some minor league call-ups. All right, everybody, we are back from our short break. I apologize. Trying to do the podcast solo has been a little bit of a learning experience. For one, my voice in the last podcast kind of faded as we went, which is kind of funny. I'm not used to talking the whole entire time, which is perfectly fine. Just something I'm trying to balance a little bit. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick before we wrapped up the recap of the last week. Moving forward, and it kind of played itself out tonight as well in the Guardians opener. I don't understand this Cleveland Guardians team. I've not understood them all year, to be honest with you. I kind of understood from the point of view that their offense has been clicking. You've got guys contributing who you weren't really expecting to contribute, guys playing at an all-star level like Josh Naylor. David Fry, I think his name is, made an all-star team as well, playing very, very well. Clearly, Jose Ramirez is one of the top third basemen in all of baseball. But you have guys like Steven Kwan, who, if they go 0 for 4, 0 for 5, like they did tonight, you have guys like Jose Ramirez who don't get the clutch hit. You have Josh Naylor looking unfortunately silly in the ninth inning against Andrew Chafin, a lefty. It really feels like this Guardians team kind of breaks down. Their starters don't scare me. Now, let me be clear, their bullpen terrifies me. They've got some really solid arms out there in the bullpen, led by a guy named Class A, who might be the most unhittable pitcher in baseball right now out of a bullpen. But you look at this Guardians starting rotation, and it is confusing how they are 20 games above 500, 19 games above 500. Like they're in first place by quite a bit for where we are in this in the season. And their starting rotation, it just doesn't scare me. And maybe it's because the Tigers have performed pretty well against them this year. Led by a Rookie of the Year candidate last year in Bybee, the Tigers seem to handle him pretty well in his career. The starting pitcher from tonight, Carlos Carrasco, who is older now, he's got a lot of innings behind him. The Tigers handled him very well tonight. Is it Gavin Williams? Even looking down here, Gavin Williams, Lively, this Howard kid who I think is partially coming out of the bullpen. Obviously, this team without McKenzie, without Bieber, looks very, very different. But somehow they're still managing to win games. And maybe that's credit to Stephen Vogt, their manager. Maybe he's just that good of a coach, and we just never knew it. I don't know. I don't believe in the Guardians moving forward. I think that the odds that they somehow manage to fumble this AL Central lead are pretty high, in my opinion. Just their starting pitching, I don't understand how it's going to last down the line. I'm not one to talk currently because I don't think it's going to be the Tigers who managed to take the AL Central from them, mostly due to the fact that our starting pitching is in even worse shape than theirs is somehow. We have more, top heavy kind of a rotation, but after that we have, at this point I would take Gavin Williams, Lively, Carlos Carrasco, any of those three over Maeda and whoever the Tigers are going to figure out for their fifth starter moving forward here. But that being said, I just don't think that I'm terribly scared of the Guardians starting rotation moving forward. So the last three games of this Guardians series, I think the key for the Tigers is really going to be getting to the starter. If they can get to the starter, get some real runs off of them before the bullpen comes in, I think we have a great chance to win. Especially with the question marks coming from the bullpen game on Tuesday and the TBD starter on Thursday. Moving into the draft. Now, I touched a little bit on the draft last week. I promised you guys we would get into it, and we will get into it a little bit in more of a depth this week. We're going to talk about where we're at on signing guys. We're going to get into a little more detail on some of the top of the draft guys. One of the main takeaways I had from this draft, and I think it's kind of interesting, really mainly two positions the Tigers drafted. Obviously, Bryce Rayner was taken first in the first round by the Tigers. He's a shortstop. He's a high school shortstop. He was committed to the University of Texas. Left-handed hitter, right-handed thrower. He, in high school, was a two-way player. I doubt the Tigers will be employing him as a starter at any point, a starting pitcher. He should project to be a Corey Seager type of shortstop, middle infielder. They gave him good money. The slot value at that pick, for any of you draft junkies, slot value for that pick was $5.71 million. The Tigers signed him today, which is Monday for reference. They signed him today to a $5.8 million bonus, which is just about $90,000 over slot, which, to be honest, a first round high school pick, that's pretty par for the course. Probably threw in a little something just to kind of, say, hey, we know you're in high school. We know you're foregoing your college eligibility. We appreciate that. We're gonna make it worth your while. In my opinion, the biggest signing so far of the draft picks that we have signed is their second round pick, Owen Hall, high school pitcher, was committed to Vanderbilt. Really, really viewed highly by a lot of people. Right-handed pitcher. That slot value at that second pick was $1.89 million. The Tigers managed to sign him for $1.75 million, saving $140,000 on that pick. For a high school guy who had the chance to go to one of the premier college programs in the country, to sign with the Tigers for under slot is a huge deal. People might not quite understand. These kids, they have the opportunity to get drafted. Obviously, this kid's second round pick. The difference between those two picks, between the Tigers' first and their second round pick, is, the bonuses they ended up getting is over $4 million different. For a kid coming out of high school, you tell him, hey, we could take you now. We'll pay you $1.75 million. Or you can go back to school, potentially get taken as one of the lottery spots in next year's, or not next year's draft, in a few years here after your junior year. And you can make $4 million more by the time they get there. Inflation will make that pick worth a lot more as well. But for the Tigers to be able to say, we believe in you, we want to give you this deal that's maybe a little worth less in your slot. I don't understand how that conversation goes. I truly don't. Maybe he just likes the Tigers. Maybe the pitch the Tigers made to him was great. Maybe he is betting that he will make more money in free agency. I don't understand. I don't get it. It's a huge coup by the Tigers to be able to get him under slot as a high school player in the second round. Maybe the Tigers be able to use some of that money moving forward on some of these other guys. The only I've outlined here, I've got the Tigers' top 11 picks here. I'll go through them real quick just so everybody is on the same page. Obviously, Bryce Rayner, first round pick. Second round pick, Owen Hall. Competitive balance B pick, Ethan. Ooh, I'm going to mess it up. Ethan Schiefenbein, I believe is how you say it. High school pitcher, committed to UCLA, lefty, has not signed as of yet. Slot value is $1.09 million. Next, in the third round, the Tigers took Josh Randall, a college junior. He is a pitcher, a right-handed pitcher. Tigers signed him for $192,000 under slot. Another guy that could have gone back to school that they ended up getting under slot for his bonus pool money. In the fourth round, the Tigers took Michael Massey, college junior pitcher, right-handed pitcher. Again, got him to sign for $114,000 under slot. This is a theme moving forward that you'll start to hear. Uh, Fifth round, the Tigers took Jack Penny, college shortstop, played for Notre Dame. Left-handed hitter, right-handed arm. Signed him for $64,000 under slot. In the sixth round, they took Woody Hayden. Hayden, I believe is how you say it. Yeah, senior in college, shortstop, switch hitter. Signed him for $54,000 under slot. In the seventh, they took Jackson Strong, college junior outfielder, the only non-pitcher, non-shortstop taken by the Tigers in this first 11 picks. He's a lefty-lefty. He have not signed him as of yet, as of recording. In the eighth round, they took Ethan Sloan, college senior pitcher, another lefty. I thought this was a typo. They signed him to a deal where his bonus was $27,000, $27,500 rather. His bonus pool slot value was at $221,400. They signed him for almost $200,000 under slot. I still would like to get that confirmed, whether that's accurate or not, but that seems like a typo. But that's a lot under slot for an eighth round guy. The two guys remaining in their top 11, Zach Swanson, high school pitcher, committed to Oregon State, just under $200,000 slot value. And then RJ Sales, a college pitcher, has not signed as of yet. I'm expecting a little more news on some of those guys here moving forward. But so far, it's been a wildly successful draft for Scott Harris and the gang in the front office for the Detroit Tigers to be able to get their guys, only one guy over slot and only by $90,000, and only your first round guy, to be able to sign these high school guys that they've been able to sign so far has been a big deal. And to be able to get the rest of the guys, especially these college juniors, to sign under slot for as much as he has, I'm not sure who the kudos really needs to go to, whether it's Scott, whether it's Greenberg, whoever's fully running the draft. They're doing very, very well. The Tigers should be very happy with the way that it's gone so far. They had one guy, I believe, like their second to last pick, 16th round, I believe, whose dad is this high school kid. Dad came out and said, "Yeah, we're not signing. We didn't even watch the draft," which is just so funny. It's such an odd place to go. I mean, maybe the Tigers were trying to move this money around. They've saved $670,000 in slot money. Maybe they're trying to throw it at a guy like that. Who knows? Just the MLB draft is so different than any other sport. It's so interesting to me. It always comes around every year, and every year I'm like, I won't pay as much attention, and I always end up getting this deep into it and trying to figure out who got the steals of the draft and who kind of played it safe is interesting to me. I remember a couple years ago, I think the Angels took only pitchers in their whole draft, which is so wild to me. But just interesting. Tigers should be super happy moving forward. They're clearly building for long-term success, trying to develop this talent. They've talked on and on about these guys that they want to be able to bring into the organization, make them better, develop them from the inside out, have more Riley Greens, have more Tarek Skubals in this organization, rather than those two guys being kind of the anomaly, the homegrown talent, if you will. Being able to make that a calling card of the organization, I believe, is what they're going for, and they've got a strong foundation so far. They're starting off pretty strong. I think you see that in a lot of the talent in the organization coming from the lower levels right now. They've been able to bring in that talent and also be able to develop guys like Colt Keith, like Justin Henry Malloy, like Riley Green, Tarek Skubal. It's a testament to Scott and his ability to build. Hopefully that it can continue at the major league level. They can figure out a way to make this progress continue past AAA Toledo, into AAA Toledo, and past it to the major leagues and on the field. We're starting to see some of those victories, literally and figuratively. in Detroit, and hopefully those can continue. It's going to be a slow build. It's going to be a slow burn compared to what the Tigers fans are wanting. But I do like the direction that they're going. I do wish that they would accelerate it a little bit, but they are trying to build this long-term perennial contender, a team that people always look at and say, yeah, they're always in the playoffs. They're always, in the division title hunt for decades. So I appreciate the vision long term. I'm praying it works out because there's a lot of question marks right now still, but they've got a good foundation started and they're continuing to build off of that. Speaking of development and being able to take guys and make them better, we need to have a very difficult conversation about one Javier Baez. It's been a rough few years for Javier Baez. And, say what you will about him, about who he is as a guy, what he brings to the team, the energy, the whatever. We need to have a candid conversation about where we're at with him in the Tigers organization. He has been frustrating to watch ever since he came to Detroit, especially at the plate. You never truly know what you're going to get from him defensively. And I think that's a conversation that can be had. But he's going to make the spectacular play on defense. Sometimes those routine kind of plays get away from him a little bit, especially in the throwing side. I can give or take his defense. At this point, I think he'll end up being serviceable at shortstop, and I think that's fine. My real concern comes at the plate, and comes to no surprise to anybody that's watched the Tigers over the last 3 years that we're having this conversation, but it's something that I know Casey and I kind of shied away from truly delving into, just kind of dancing around it. I'm not going to be mean by any means, but it has to be a conversation that we have. I'm going to give you a stat line, and we're gonna see where we land on it. So far this year, Javier Baez has had 209 at bats as of recording, not including tonight's game. He has 37 hits, 10 doubles, 1 home run. He is hitting 177. His on-base percentage is 212. His OPS is 451. He currently has a OPS plus, which, as a refresher, we've not gone over OPS plus in a minute. OPS plus is just comparing your on-base plus slugging percentage to the league average. The league average being 100. Anything below 100 is below league average on a scale. Anything above 100 is above league average. He is currently sitting at 27. He has 8 walks this year to 47 strikeouts. He has a F WAR of negative 1.1. Just some truly shocking numbers. To be hitting under 200, it's clearly indicative of a guy who has not adjusted. We've been saying for years at this point in the Tigers organization, and it seems like it's been an issue to some degree throughout his career, but he just does not make adjustments at the plate very well. It's a tale as old as time now, the way the pitchers are going to handle at-bats against him. Right-handed pitching, left-handed pitching, it really doesn't matter. They're going to go down and away with off-speed, because he'll swing over the top of it, looking to launch. And when he starts to be able to make some contact with that, they go high heat. Go fastball up or fastball in. And the common theme here is that nothing is over the plate. You do not have to throw Javier Baez a strike. And the issue comes when you have an organization that their calling card, or their supposed calling card, over the last 2 years under Scott Harris has been uh, controlling the strike zone. And when you have a player who does not have to have a strike thrown to him to be able to get himself out, that's a really bad look. He's just struggling to, I don't know, struggling. I don't know what the solution is, what the answer is. Maybe there's no answer. But maybe he just doesn't have the capacity to change the way that he approaches every at bat. We've seen attempts from guys in this organization to change the way they've approached hitting. You think of guys like Torque, obviously the results aren't there. He's had good results, but currently not experiencing them. Guys like Riley, guys like Kerry Carpenter, guys, even you talk about Colt Keith, who has made such a huge adjustment in the way that he's approached hitting in this season. Within the beginning of the season to right now, Colt Keith has made a more monumental change to his plate approach than Javier Baez has made in 3 years. And I think that's super important to talk about, because you have a guy that's contributing to the payroll in the way that he is. It's just so frustrating. It's very difficult to watch as a fan. You have a guy who's on a 6-year, $140 million deal through the year 2027. And you see a guy who's hit one home run over the last 24 months, it seems. And who's not been consistent, who's not been able to even play defense to the level where you're thinking that might be worth it. It's so, you're shocked when he gets a hit. You're shocked when he takes a walk. You're almost at cardiac arrest when he takes a walk at this point. I have on my computer, I have a comparison sheet. Some guys that I've thought it interesting that I keep track of this year, kind of comparing numbers. Some former Tigers, some players that I just thought were interesting. I have Evan Carter's numbers on here, comparing them to Parker Meadows due to some foolhardy prediction that I made at the beginning of the year. Longtime podcast listeners will understand. But I've had on here for the last 2 to 3 months comparisons between Javier Baez and a former AL Central shortstop who had a lot of hype around him early in his career, Tim Anderson. And if you know anything about the baseball buzz, is that Tim Anderson was released by the Miami Marlins July 5th, which is just over 2 weeks ago. His stat line is arguably, well, not even arguably, it's very similar to Javier Baez's, if not better. Tim Anderson had around 25 plate appearances, or 25 at-bats more than Javier Baez. He had 13 more hits than Javi, 7 less doubles, 1 less home run. He had no home runs. He was seeing 214 as compared to Javier Baez's 177. His on-base percentage was 20 points higher. His on-base plus slugging was about 12 points higher. His OPS plus was three higher. He was at 30. Javier Baez is at 27. 1 less walk, a lot more strikeouts, which is why his F4 is 1.3 negative as compared to Javier Baez's negative 1.1. Just such an interesting comparison between the two of them, and it really shows you that the fact that the Tigers are keeping him is solely related to his contract. The fact that he is owed so much money by this organization, we can thank Al Avila, is the only reason he has a job currently with the Detroit Tigers. If he was on I'm struggling to think of a number. I mean, I think even right now, if he was on a $10 to $15 million a year deal for the rest of his contract, I think the Tigers eat it. I think the Tigers have already eaten it by now. They've waived him, they've released him, whatever needs to happen with him, and he's gone. But he's not. His contract is dictating that he stays. You've seen AJ really bench him against right-handed pitching for the most part. The writing is on the wall for Javier Baez, and I think that if you start to see some guys play well down in Toledo, you start to have any sort of resurgence from a guy like Ryan Kreidler. If Eddie's Leonard comes back from his current injury and plays well at all, even you start to see Jace Young start to push towards the major leagues. I think we could start to be seeing the beginning of the end for Javier Baez, hopefully. I wish nothing for the best, but for Javi, but he's single-handedly made shortstop for the Detroit Tigers one of the least productive positions in baseball, and is really frustrating to see. To end out the podcast this week, I thought I would go over some uplifting, optimistic, happy news. Something I was really excited to see as someone that lives in the greater Grand Rapids, Michigan area. We've had our eye on some prospects this year. Our draft picks from last year are starting to make some noise. And the Tigers made the decision to call Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal up to the West Michigan Whitecaps, which is a really good promotion for them. I think it'll be a good challenge for the both of them going into August, September. Hopefully they'll be able to stick it out this year and start next year there, I would assume. But for those of you who don't follow very closely, Max Clark is the Tigers' #1 overall prospect, the 10th overall prospect in baseball, the number 10. Kevin McGonigal is the Tigers' 4th ranked prospect, and he is the number 63rd ranked prospect in all of baseball. Really big news for them. You start to look at the numbers. Max Clark has really started to turn it on here as of late. This year, he's had 280 at-bats in low A Lakeland. 80 hits, 7 home runs, 58 RBIs, 26 stolen bases, hitting .286 with an on-base percentage of .386, and an OPS of .807. So really turned it on lately. He had a slow start. Really good to see from him. The power speed combo really start to play. His defense has been really good from all reports in Lakeland. And he should be starting, or they should be taking part in their first games Tuesday night, the night of the release of this podcast, which is super exciting. So we're going to have to get over to see some of those games. Also, I don't want to leave him out. Kevin McGonigal, he's had a heck of a start down in Lakeland, and he's well-deserved this call-up as well, just as much, if not more, than Max Clark. This year, Kevin McGonigal, 230 at-bats, 75 hits, 4 home runs, 37 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, hitting .326 with an on-base percentage of .407. And his OPS is almost in the 900s. So, again, a couple of 19-year-old guys doing great things in the minor leagues. Super exciting. Super exciting. Kevin McGonigal might give our boy Rayner a run for his money at shortstop. We don't know. Also, just looking at his page after reading those stats, Kevin McGonigal and I share a birthday. Obviously, 6 years my junior at this point, which is weird enough to say in and of itself. Both born on the 18th of August. So that's pretty cool. But yeah. Some farmhands making good, which is really good to see. Again, going back to our draft conversation, showing the development in the organization to be able to take these high school guys and to develop them and help them improve their skills, and rewarding them by giving them their next challenge. And it's so cool. I think this is pretty cool about baseball. It's not just get drafted and automatically make the team. It's such a process and a growth. And makes you a better man, it seems, to go through this process of getting promoted, making it to the big leagues. Not everybody can be like the great Paul Skeens, but yeah, these guys seem to be doing it the right way, seem to be growing and meeting these goals that the Tigers have set for them. So this upcoming week, I thought I'd go over real fast just what's coming up here. We are in the middle of a 4-game series in Cleveland, which should be wrapping up this road trip to start the second half after the All-Star break here. Tigers have won the first game of that 4-game series. They can secure at least a series split with a win tomorrow. It should be a bullpen day, which should be interesting. Then the Tigers have Jack Flaherty going on Wednesday versus Tanner Bybee. And then the last day, Tigers have a TBD starter going against Gavin Williams. Again, all 3 of these games very gettable against Cleveland. Cleveland's offense has really struggled as of late. And again, we've went over their starters. So we know what's going on there. After that, the Tigers this weekend back home versus the Minnesota Twins with 2 night games and a day game. Should be interesting. Twins seem to have started to turn it on. Tigers haven't played against the Twins since the beginning of the month, and they lost that series kind of painfully. That was the last series we had before this recent good run of form. They've had some good games, came after that against Cincinnati and then Cleveland. So it'll be important for the Tigers to get a couple games against Minnesota. I think that's probably in the next... in my opinion, in the next couple weeks, the most important series. You've got a home series against probably the other hot team in your division. You want to do well. After that, we have a weird little 2-game homestand or a home series against Cleveland again. So the Tigers play the Guardians 6 times in the next 9 days. Super odd. But it starts a homestand against all AL Central opponents and a run of 4 series against only AL Central. So time to make some big gains in the Central, big games in the standings for the Tigers. And it'd be really nice to end the month of July on this hot streak. Currently in the month of July, we have a winning record. I like to keep that going. The Tigers tomorrow when they play will be again going to get back to 500. Which will be the latest in the season the Tigers have been above 500 in 6 to 7 years. So that's super big news for this team. I think it's super important, especially for the morale and especially moving forward towards a week from tomorrow is the trade deadline. So yeah, we'll have to see. It's going to be kind of a day before the deadline recording for next week. So we'll kind of see where we're at. We'll see where the team is at. We'll see what rumors we've heard, if anybody's already been dealt. A lot of people are predicting kind of a slower market. I have creatively chosen to ignore the Tarek Skubal rumors. I didn't want to end this podcast without saying something about it, but it really wouldn't make a lot of sense for the Tigers to trade Tarek Skubal right now unless they got the package of a lifetime for him, a Juan Soto from the Nationals to the Padres kind of a deal. Not every team can come up with that kind of prospect capital, and I don't think they'd be willing to give it up for him. So I don't think it'll happen, and I've kind of not really given it the credence that probably other people have, but I just don't see it happening, so I haven't really thought too much about it. If the Tigers were to trade Tarek Skubal, I might end my podcasting career and my Tigers fandom. It's just I feel like he brings such a moxie and a mojo to this organization that it'd be pretty hard to replace with some minor league guys. So again, next week we will be going more into the trade deadline, guys that we may acquire, guys who I like. Hopefully nothing crazy pops off before then. If something wild happens, I'll try to do some sort of emergency pod, but otherwise you should plan on hearing from me again next Tuesday. I appreciate every single one of you for listening. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you guys and to be able to kind of give you my thoughts on the Tigers. I know it's probably a little less venomous than a lot of people would like it to be, but It's just truly how I feel. I seem to be a little more of an even keeled person when it comes to takes and opinions, but we shall see. We shall see whether I should have been more aggressive on the team or not. They should play their way into a decision from me one way or another here soon. But thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for giving me the time to tell you what I think. We will talk to you next week, guys. Go Tigers.